Okay. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Reciprocity Alchemy. As you all know by now, this is Kanchan Satpathy, and I'm an architect and lawyer. And my life purpose is to nurture a world abundant with grace, expression, and dignity so that each one of us can feel loved and empowered to live our life to the fullest. And this I do through my expression of building homes and realizing dreams, through my construction and design company, Fort Point India Private Limited, and empowering entrepreneurs through this forum of reciprocity. We are a business forum which is in the business of empowering entrepreneurship, embodying the philosophy of reciprocity through its core pillars of learn, lean, and grow. Reciprocity Alchemy is one such learning initiative to bring various perspectives from experts on diverse topics, which can be shared with all of us. And this opens our minds to new paradigms and knowledge. Alchemy, as the name suggests, is the process of transformation, a transformation or creation of new ideas and thoughts. And it is our endeavor to consistently provide an enriching experience to our audience. And this experience will add enriching value in creating alchemy. And our topic for today is strategy versus execution. So, strategic skills allow a leader to create policies, establish direction, and determine how effectively to allocate our resources to achieve a larger goal. Whereas execution, on the other hand, involves tactical, practical skills that are needed to put a plan into motion. So, strategy versus execution, which is more important to your company's success? So if you had to choose, what would you say? A sound business strategy is better than a successful execution, or vice versa? Bold moves are never easy, and they're also not cheap or safe. But one reason leaders discard maverick thinking is because they pay 3 seconds attention to strategy and immediately proceed to execution challenges. Which is more important, strategy or execution? The vanilla answer is actually both, which you will get from most people. But let's ask our experienced panelists here with us today about what are they more aligned with and what has worked for them. So here I am introducing our distinguished panelists today. Firstly, Ms. Sangeeta Talwar. She's the creator of iconic brands like Maggie and Tata Tea and many such more. Mr. Aditya Kashyap. He's the CEO of Majoral India. Mr. Anil Mehta, MD and CEO of India Shelter Housing. And Dr. Avantika Tomar, Associate Partner at EY Parthenon. Friends, this session of Alchemy today will be co-hosted and moderated by my dynamic, charismatic, and extremely inquisitive colleague, Aditya Singh. Aditya, please introduce yourself and also guide us through this journey of today's Alchemy session. Over to you, Aditya.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kanchan. And I thank Reciprocity Alchemy for having such meaningful conversations about entrepreneurship day in and day out. I'm Aditya. I'm founder of Expedify.io, a company that expedites digital marketing experiences. I'm also the moderator of this session today and have more than 10,000 hours on video games, photography, martial arts, guitar, and entrepreneurship. It is a pleasure today to host this panel discussion on the topic of strategy versus execution. Now, we have pretty much heard it all, isn't it? Right? We have heard people with stories of winning and losing, with strategy and execution. People who completely believe in strategy or execution. And there are people who hang somewhere between the line of strategy and execution. Now, personally, I hang in between somewhere of strategy and execution. And sometimes I oscillate between the two extremes of strategy and execution. Now, in short, I would like to say it's a complicated relationship. Now, today, we have the opportunity to figure this out, or possibly try to. I personally am a big fan of both doing and thinking. I believe that when nothing moves, then nothing moves, right? But at the same time, why do we do what we do? I'm at a conundrum. Sometimes I know the way, and sometimes I just walk the way. And to solve this conundrum, I have with us here today a rocking panel. Now, before we go ahead, here is how the next 90 minutes are going to be. Number one, round of introductions of the panelists. Number two, opening thoughts with a time limit of 5 minutes for every panelist. Appreciation and or counters in the next round, timed at 5 minutes each. Closing thoughts and learnings, 5 minutes. And at any point when a panelist increases or goes beyond the 4-minute mark, I would request Kanchan, Sankalp or Aman to do a soft interrupt in between. And finally, we'll have final remarks and learnings towards the end. So I have with me a esteemed panelist, and before going further, I would like to introduce number one, Sangeeta Talwar. Now, with 3 decades of experience in domestic and international market, she has spearheaded innovation at Nestle and Tata Tea. She has helped launch a much-loved brand we all know as Maggi. She has been awarded as Business Today 30 most powerful women in Indian business, India Today women in the corporate world. Let's give it up for Sangeeta Talwar.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adi.
Sangeeta, yeah, so this is your time on your opening thoughts on strategy.
Now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to begin by introducing a concept of leadership that I believe in, and I call it Fly Vision. And Fly Vision has been talked about in my book, which I authored 2 years ago and is published by Penguin. It's called The 2-Minute Revolution. It's a bunch of business stories that I put together from my own professional life. The concept of Fly Vision has 2 parts. One is the ability to fly with the birds, and the other is to have the vision of a fly. And I think a successful leader needs both. And let me spend a minute to explain this. When you fly with the birds, you ricochet out from where you are today, and you perhaps go to a height of 20 or 30,000 feet. The whole landscape shifts. Those horizons melt, and you recontextualize, or you're able to recontextualize where you are today and perhaps start to create a clearer picture of where you'd like to be tomorrow. With an ever-changing consumer, I think this is fundamental to good leadership, to be able to do this often. And I'll come back to that word often, just after I finish with the concept of Fly Vision. The other aspect of Fly Vision, other than being able to strategize and fly with the birds, is really to have the vision of a fly. I don't know how many of you realize, but a fly is the one creature that has almost a 360-degree vision. And wouldn't we love that? But that's what the fly has. And therefore, it's unswattable because it's very sensitive to movement and air around itself. So as a leader, as a successful leader, you need to have the vision of a fly. You need to be able to have a 360-degree perspective, a hawk's eye, agility, responsiveness, and be as sensitive to your surroundings as the fly. So that's my concept of Fly Vision. I think a leader needs to be able to strategize as well as have the vision of a fly to see through the execution of that strategy. You know, strategy is a big word, and all kids, when they study, you know, they think that the strategy is the thing to do in life. And so a lot of B school kids who used to come out of B school, they had this chip on their shoulder that we're good for strategy. Don't ask us to roll up our sleeves and get to work, right? But let me tell you, strategy never built any top line and never brought you any bottom line. So unless your strategy has been excellently executed at the front end and made a surviving and long-term connection to your consumer and customer, you ain't going to see any revenue or profit. So it's extremely essential. I think I have about a minute and a half more. I want to place this in the context of the fact that in a turbulent, let's forget the word VUCA. VUCA is a much talked about word. In a turbulent world like we've just seen, which brought the worldwide economy almost to its heels in a matter of a few days, okay, and threatened to destroy everything humanity has built over the last so many years across the world, severely impacted or had the potential to severely impact human life. Put that along with this extreme focus on going green, extreme focus, I call it. And if we have time, maybe we can come back to that a little bit later. But where sustainability is taking precedence over sustenance. Okay, then put that along with the very intensive digitization that is not only happened during now, it's got tremendously accelerated, but we were all going digital as a world even before COVID. And that enables a competition to come out of the woodwork. When you put all these things together, I think strategy uh, cannot any longer be something that you do once a year, something that you do for the next 3 to 5 years. It's got to be a roster of decisions. It's got to be a roster of big choices that you can keep alive with you as you proceed in your journey as a leader to lead organizations towards their longer term destination. Adi, is my time up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. It's up.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. What really stood out for me was like the vision of a fly. I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing it, and it just makes so much sense. Thank you so much for your perspective, Sangeeta. Right. So next up, we have with us Dr. Avantika Tomar. Now, Dr. Avantika Tomar is not just an educator at institutes like MDI and IIMs, but has been an associate partner at EY Paratheon. She has strategy and organizational consulting experience in various geographies. With a PhD in strategic HR management from IIM Calcutta, Avantika is also passionate academic with a focus on practical business learning. Let's give it up for Dr. Avantika Tomar.
Thank you so much, Ari, and thanks everyone. Sangeeta, so the business school with the chip on the shoulder, unfortunately, I think I fall in that category that you just described. Apologies on behalf of all these kids who've done this to you before.
Read the first chapter in my book, please.
Will do. Even Elon Musk has recently come out to say the problem of corporate America is MBAs. So yeah, guilty as charged there. Let me probably just start this note around strategy and execution and what it perhaps means by saying both are woefully inadequate, almost meaningless without each other, right? So I mean, everyone on the call would agree with me, and like Sangeeta said, there's no point having great direction but nowhere to know how to get there. And vice versa as well. You might be great in the details, but there is no point if you don't have that direction and knowing where you are and where you want to be. We are, as consultants, so I'm a management consultant, we are often blamed for doing the easy bit, which is write a beautiful PowerPoint deck, which a lot of you might have seen before. We write that deck, we do all the numbers, we write a strategy, and we say, here, this is tied with a beautiful bow, and off you go, start doing it. How can it be any more difficult now, right? And often I think the devil's in the detail, right? The devil is in the doing, not the thinking. So I completely, again, I just agree with everything that people say about consultants. Having said that, though, let me just, stand by my profession here for a second and try and demystify what strategy perhaps even means, right? And I think it's one of those things that's, I think it's a overused word. It's a rather abused word. Only because we think strategy is what strategy consultants do, right? Or the chief strategy officer does, right? Whereas I think of it a bit differently. I think strategy is in everything we do, right? Like whether we are planning a dinner party or organizing a wedding or perhaps, planning a vacation, there is strategy in everything. Whether you're going to Spain or Shimla, you would have to think about how you want to spend your time there, because time is limited. If you're going there for 2 weeks, are you going to perhaps catch up with some friends? Are you going to do some sightseeing? Do you want to try the local cuisine a lot more? What is it that you want to actually spend your time on? So every time you're actually even breaking that up and thinking about your vacation to Spain or Shimla, like I said, you are in fact strategizing. You are in fact prioritizing. It's more important for me to, look at all the sides, do some cultural experiences, as opposed to perhaps eating Spanish or Himachali food, right? I think the bit that gets lost in all of this, right, and hence the debate, and hence we're all here, is most people, and this is, I'm speaking now from my personal experience of being a consultant for 10 years, most people know what are they doing and how are they doing. What they don't know is why are they doing it, right? I, in my job, talk to a lot of CEOs, CHROs, COOs, and oftentimes, they'll very proudly display, look, here's what we've done, and these are our numbers and metrics and charts, and this is how we do it, and I have a wonderful team of people to support, and da da da. When we ask the simple question on, do you know why you're doing what you're doing? I think that's where the challenges are, and that's where a lot of times people don't know what the direction of travel is. They know what speed they are traveling at. They know what vehicle they are traveling in. They just don't know where they are going, right? And then just to close, this segment of my thoughts out, I 100% agree with Sangeeta's word of often, because I think gone are the days when we need to plan once in 3 years, right? There is a strategy plan, a corporate business plan that a consultant will come and write for the next 3 years. And then we'll somehow try to implement it and execute it down to the detail. I think that time is well and truly over. I'm sure some people here must have heard of the terminology around agile, which is a very fashionable thing these days. Everyone wants to be agile in their business. Every team wants to be agile. Every customer delivery has to be agile, etc. What that really means is you need to plan often. You need to strategize often. And Sangeeta, I'm sorry, I'm heavily borrowing your word. But that's really the essence. So it's no longer about strategize for 3 to 5 years. It's about plan often, fail fast. That's probably the message I leave here. Back to you, Addy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Avantika. Plan often, fail fast, right? I mean, I think that pretty much summarizes what you said, and I think you really beautifully brought out both the narratives of strategy and execution with an inclination towards the strategy and the why, which is exactly why we are here. Thank you so much for your perspective, Dr. Avantika.
Most welcome.
Great. So moving on forward, we have with us here today Mr. Anil Mehta. Now, Mr. Mehta is MD and CEO of India Shelter. He's built a value-based organization with high-growth business model backed by marquee investors and strong management. With over last 11 years, he's grown the organization to 90 plus branches in 12 states with 28,000 customers, with AUM expected to close this year at 2,200 crores plus. ISFC was founded with the mission to improve the reach and quality of housing to middle and lower segment based on his deep understanding of risk evaluation and to create a social impact in life of customers. Let's give it up for Mr. Anil Mehta. Anil, this is your time on your opening thoughts on strategy and execution.
Great. I don't know if I have 5 minutes to speak about because I gave up reading books long ago. I can only talk about experiential alleged wisdom. Is that I've been in business something like these 6 years now, and started my career with a company where I worked 11 years and strategy didn't change. So we kept executing to the same plan for all 11 years. It was a simple strategy. Grab the market is virgin. Let's keep doing what we are doing and do it well. So nothing changed. So for about 27 years, I was a corporate bureaucrat, participating in strategy and execution and everything. And, at that time, there was a distinct boundary between what was strategy and what was execution. That has, like Avantika said, hugely changed in the last 10 years that I've been in business myself. Strategy is an everyday thing. Taking our own example, we started 11 years ago with a certain strategy basis which we raised money and we executed for 2 years and suddenly realized the world is changing on us. So now it's an everyday thing, and strategy drives execution, execution drives strategy. So from 2016 on, 4 life-changing events have happened to us. Demonetization, GST, COVID, and the whole new regulatory environment. So life has completely changed 4 times over in the last 4 years, 16, 17, 18, 19. So life has completely changed. This COVID has completely upended everything we knew about how to run our business. Suddenly people don't want to come to work. uh, and you suddenly realize they don't really need to come to work. I don't need to go to work. My office is in Gurgaon. I sit in Udaipur or Goa or Chennai, and I'm running my business perfectly well from over there. I interact with my folks probably 8, 9 hours a day. I'm being much more productive, a lot less small talk, lot less coffee time. Uh, and we found over the last 9 months, I think, initially it was that we are depriving ourselves of the social experience of working together. Now, over time, last 3, 4 months, I'm finding that element coming back in a different form. So for us, engaging with people, I mean, the big challenge is the people challenge. How do you keep your people engaged? Because our frontline works on the ground. They are meeting customers, they are sitting in an office, they are interacting with customers in the office, while we are sitting at home or wherever we are in an office and are not exposed to the same risks. Now, suddenly, our environment, their environment is completely at odds. Now, you could end up with an organization where the frontline is completely disconnected with the leadership, or you find your new ways. So now we are finding a new way. We are saying, all right, travel a bit, but also do use these new means, the Zoom, Teams, whatever else you do, to create engagement in this new form. And that, I think today, the one challenge I grapple with the most is this: how to navigate this new world where I keep my folks engaged, we still stay connected without, shaking hands, without hugging each other, without doing these annual jamborees, quarterly jamborees, etc. So that, to me, today is the biggest challenge. The regulatory environment changing every day, the financial environment changing every day. We are strategizing every damn day. The strategic meetings which we used to have once a year have suddenly become a daily affair. Every Saturday we actually make choices. For me, strategy is all about choices. One great example I never tire of displaying is the Kingfisher example. Super execution, fantastic experience, very poor strategy. And airline industry offers the best examples of strategy. You've got SpiceJet, you've got Indigo, everywhere in the world, wherever you go. So airline industry is, and I spend a lot of my time on planes, and I realize airlines are a great example of, how to strategize and how to fail, how to execute and how to fail. And there are both examples at both extremes available. So for me now, since Aditya tells me I've got 40 seconds, I think these are both inextricably linked. The boundary between what was strategy and what was execution is gone now. Strategy is an everyday affair, like both Sangeeta and Avantika said. These are, this new agile world. And I think it's become a very absorbing, and it sucks you in. It's a vortex. This whole thing about strategy has become a vortex where you could either get pulled in and paralyzed into analyzing and agonizing over choices, or you could just say, I know this much, let me get on with it and execute, and I'll come back and change. So you can change your choices much more often than you could 10 years ago. So that's for me. Yep. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Anil sir. I think what really drives the point home for me was that strategy drives execution and execution drives strategy. And what was extremely interesting was also that you mentioned that now you are strategizing pretty much every day compared to the earlier times, right? So thank you so much for your perspective, Mr. Mehta. Going forward, and lastly, but definitely not the least, we have Mr. Aditya Kashyap with us. Now, Aditya Kashyap has over 25 years of experience in aviation, banking, financial services, healthcare and insurance, and information technology industries. He has grown in ranks, managing operations of many Fortune 100 clients for companies like Daksh E-Services, Epicenter Technologies, Genpact, and Aegis. He is CEO of Measural, an active all-rounder at anything in life and cricket. I have with me Mr. Aditya. Let's give it up for Mr. Aditya.
Thank you, everyone. Of course, last but not the least, and so agreeing with all the three panelists, we can't really see any either strategy or execution in a silo. But Anil Mehta sir, I'll pick up from your examples of daily strategy. Daily strategy is more of daily decision making versus strategy. We decide and then we focus on execution. And it also depends on the team which is involved in the strategy making. That's very important. So if we have experience like Dr. Vantika Tomar there, who will guide us and be focused on detail, it's going to be a great strategy. But at times, what I have seen is that the team which is deciding the strategy of an organization doesn't have the required skill set. And that's when we are bound to fail. Of course, I am a very, so on Gallup, my activator strength is very high. So I am an execution guy. And in the recent pandemic, when government announced about the Janta curfew, I could remember that we didn't have time to strategize. I had around 2,000 employees. And before the Janta curfew happened, actually, I had dispatched 2,000 desktops and PCs to my employees' home. I knew that the lockdown is going to happen. I didn't have time to strategize. I had to decide and I had to execute. And that's what, so last 4 years that you were saying that we have been experiencing some issue or the other, it is the decision making and then proper execution of that, which can get us out of it. Yes, agreeing to the fact that if you have the right people making the strategic decision, that's very important. In the corporate world, at times we are given a team which definitely doesn't have, all of them doesn't have the skill set, but they have the decision making authority. That becomes challenging for us. I've been on both the sides. I've been an entrepreneur multiple times and in the corporate sector. Now I am in the corporate sector back. So in the corporate sector, especially, this challenge that I face. Being an entrepreneur is much easier, but with the budget constraints and all, and if you don't have to have budgets to hire the right people or hire ENY, for example, to support, we at times have failed. So I'll sum it up. Yeah, we can't do without. None of them are without each other. We have to have a very strong strategy backed with. In fact, I'll say a new word. It's also about execution strategy. If you have decided the strategy but haven't built an execution in it, if the teams are separate, you are up for disaster.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your perspective, Aditya. And execution strategy, right? I mean, at the end of the day, a strategy document should have some execution guidelines and a clear plan of action for it to materialize. Thank you so much for your perspective, Aditya. Now, at this point, what we are going to do is, as the structure of the meeting is, that we are going to circle back to Sangeeta. And Sangeeta, I mean, the kind of rejoinder in terms of what you heard other panelists say, if you could kind of lay out your point of view.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, while I spoke about, and so did Dr. Vantika, talk about strategy being not something you lock in for 3 years, 5 years, whatever. And I think she said plan often and fail fast. While I agree with that, and I think Anil mentioned that strategy drives execution, execution drives strategy, and every day you get sucked into this whole vortex of stuff that's happening around you. I think it's very important at all times, whatever the situation, to have something called a vision. Now, again, it's a very maligned set of words: vision, mission, values. But I think they've also been over-intellectualized in many cases. But I think it's at the core of answer to that question, why? Why do I want to do something? Where am I headed? Is there a long-term perspective, an underlying long-term linkage in terms of what I want to achieve? And that will be influenced by values. And you can start to then see how you can build on the basis of that set of values, the culture of an organization. And I think very famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And it does, because we've just spoken about how, you can have an ivory tower strategy, but you're never going to see any turnover or profit unless you can execute it and bring in business, right? And that, I think, one of the big guideposts of that is culture. And and culture obviously is about how the people who are working for you, the whole organizational system that you're surrounded by, how does that interweave, interlink, interact, cooperate with each other to achieve something? And I think there it's very important. And the analogy I usually give it is, as a leader, you've got to be a magnet. You've got to align all your little iron filings in the same direction. And where can that magnetism, how can you bring it forth? By having that, that vision which will tie everything together. Say, humko ye karna hai. This is what our company is going to do. This is what we're going to try to do. We may not be able to do it in a single sweep. We may not be able to achieve it in a single year, but this is where we want to be headed. And this is how each one of you is going to contribute. So one of the things I always used to tell my team, that, every wheel, in order for any wheel to move, every cog in that wheel is critical. So I don't care whether you're a peon or you're a vice president, you're all important to the business. You all have a role to play. And I think as a leader, what can tie all of this together is that feeling of commitment that you create in people, the passion that you create in them. And that can come from this vision, mission, values. And I see that as even something in your personal life, and it's difficult to do. It's not easy to do. The why question is the most difficult question to answer, as Simon Sinek also says, right? I mean, if you can answer that question, I think you'll have sorted your strategy, and then, you can get to the execution. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sangeeta, for the perspective. I mean, at the end of it, I mean, what you said, it completely makes sense, right? Like, you have to completely get a vision and a mission in order, just so that you could have the values and a culture that is ready to execute. And the why and the culture is extremely important for the execution capability for any company. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Now, bringing in Dr. Avantika. Dr. Avantika, what did you like? What's your perspective on what you heard up until now? Is there some contradictory point that you feel, or do you largely agree with the panel?
No, I actually largely agree with what everyone's saying. I guess just one quick point to sort of deep down a little bit more on is this idea of who does what. Right. So, Sangeeta's example of cog in the wheel and all of that, I think Aditya was kind of hinting that as well, that it's very important for there to be this top-down vision that cascades down from the thinkers to the doers. But at the same time, there needs to be that upward flow of information as well, which is a bottom-up information on what's working on the ground and what's not. Right. And exactly to Sangeeta's point, there are roles and there is a delineation that is often needed, because it can't be a group hug, right? It can't be, let's all walk towards, in the same direction as this big group of 5,000 people. It just wouldn't happen. Someone's got to lead. Someone's got to be able to show that direction. There's got to be a North Star. But at the same time, I think where I have seen companies, both large and small, really go wrong is when these roles and responsibilities, these accountabilities, who's doing what, how does what I do fit into what Adi does, fit into what Anil should therefore take on, right? When that is unclear, I think that's where a lot of the challenges start to happen. And that's where the finger pointing, he said, she said, oh no, this was communicated to us, oh no, but we thought we were doing this. The reason all of that happens, and in a crude way, the reason our business exists, my shop runs, is because there is that lack of clarity on who's doing what. I'm pretty certain that if that top-down vision was laid out in a way that everybody understood their part, I don't think we'll need as many consultants in the world. That's everything from me, Adi.
Very powerful, Dr. Avantika, very powerful. At the end of the day, I mean, if people they have a very clear-cut JD, a clear-cut roadmap in terms of what they are doing and what their objectives, their key results are, I mean, then things and the world would be a much better place, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so bringing Mr. Mehta into the fray. Mr. Mehta, your point of view about what you've heard up until now.
Yeah, it is a fray. I mean, I sort of strongly resonate with what Sangeeta said about aligning the filings. uh, the challenge when you try to execute on that is, again, like I said, the change. And what has in addition happened since I started working as a management trainee is that, aligning the filings used to take a lot of talking, lot of hugging, lot of shaking hands, and repeating it ad nauseum, right? Now, with the amount of distractions you've got today, and uh, the slight change in, I don't know if I totally agree with this whole new generation being, classifying them as millennials and Gen Zs and so on. But we were pretty much these guys when we were young. So I don't think there is that change. But the number of distractions has certainly changed. There is a lot more information. There are many more ideas. And I think the key for a successful guy today is probably, and I am a bundle of failures. Last 11 years, I've failed probably 110 times. Even I think Avantika said, Sangeeta said that you got to be clear about why you are doing it. And frankly, when today I look back, so I will be a little long-winded here, Aditya. I hope you forgive me. Is that when I started this business, I had been a career corporate guy for 20. I call myself a corporate bureaucrat for 27 years then, and I was hitting 47, and I said, no, it's time to get out of this business, which my soul didn't align with, and I wanted to do something I knew. And I said, okay, what do I know? I know the lending business. Let me get into lending business. Went into the lending business. Luckily, we got a lot of funding, more than what we needed. Kept raising. We've raised 5 times, and each one of those 5 times, I now realize COVID has given everybody a lot of time to introspect, think, and look back on life. So likewise for me. And I mean, why the hell did I do that? I'm going to be 60 soon. I should have, in the third round, I would have made the same amount of money. The market was rocking. I should have said, here you are, bye bye. I've done what I could. So sometimes, one loses perspective also because, especially smaller businesses like ours, are intensely involving, and you are walking in the grass. The time to, I mean, you need to be brutal about the time to sit on the tree. Every 3 months, you need to have a friend, you need to have a foil within or outside the organization who will show you the world from the outside, because you are intensely involved. Uh, and ours is a people business. We've got 1,300 people. Unfortunately, they are not in the same place. They are in 95 places. Now, groups of 4, 5 in 95 different places. It takes a physical toll, it takes an emotional toll, and it takes a lot of planning and gridding. And, so I run a huge Excel sheet for 90. How many people have I touched in the last quarter? Have I touched every branch? Have I touched every manager? Have I touched every senior manager, every vice president? Have I met with my management team at least 3 times this week in a group? So I run that huge grid, and it's become like it's complex. And there is never, and maybe I've not been brutal with myself, one doesn't take out the time to sit on the tree and watch the world. So COVID has done that great thing of helping us plan on when to climb on the tree and how long to sit there. So that's the big thing. And I think, all of us strategy cats, I mean, investors, I'm hoping I know something about strategy because the investors have validated it by their checks 5 times over. So, but I mean, strategy for myself, I've been a massive monumental failure at it on a personal strategy. And ultimately that impacts business, because if your personal plan is not aligned with what you do for a living and what you are involved and immersed in, it doesn't quite work. So I am having to do a lot of realignment of my own mind with my business to get back to the moorings. But one thing I sort of don't quite get is what Avantika and Aditya said about having a big a sort of boundary around the guys who strategize. Yes, it's important for guys to be separated, isolated after they've heard everything, but they cannot avoid not having been in the trenches, right? They have to get out, synthesize, and come out with what needs to be done. And after that, concentrate on execution. Unfortunately, that time when we could do 100% concentration on execution is gone. I mean, my learning over the last 3-4 years has been that time is gone. When you could just focus on execution, you got to keep a very sharp eye on which choice do you need to meet again. For me, strategy is a, overused, it's become a cliche almost. So, but to me, it's about choices. What choices are you going to make on every little thing? What kind of people do I need to have? What kind of training do I need to invest in? What kind of new business initiatives I need to take? What do I need to throw away? It's about saying no more than saying yes. So which are the things I need to say no to now? So that has become the key. So it's difficult to keep away from the guys who are in the trenches. Early up, the chief of staff could sit in Delhi and run a war. But today, unless he's intensely, even the forge is like so hugely networked now. It's a network war all the time. So even the Jawan in the US Army, and the Jawan is connected to the CEO of the army. So that's what has changed. So that I see it as, I mean, if you sit back and look at the waves of change, I think what has changed is these 2-3 things. That one, difficult to carry charisma and align the filings, like Sangeeta said. Difficult to have a clear difference in strategy and implementation teams. But yes, I completely align that you do need to have a North Star in every organization. But how I'm seeing it is that the North Star will keep changing direction every 3, 4, 5 years. So yeah, that's my 2 pennies.
Oh, thank you so much. So there's a lot of material there that really stood out for me. And the most importantly, I think, is the humility that you came with, right? I mean, I truly believe that at the end of the day, people who are failing more are doing more. And so kudos to that, sir. And so carrying the charisma and a clear difference in the strategy and execution team. But I also heard you say, and what I think Dr. Vinterka Tomar also resonated with, is not the information flow is not supposed to be just top to bottom. It's also supposed to go from bottom to top on what's working and what's not working. And strategy is always kind of a moving target, really. Great, thank you so much. Now bringing Aditya Kashyap. Aditya, a kind of a quick rejoinder in terms of what you heard up until now.
I agree with all three, and I'll support all the statements made. And that's what I think. So you make a statement, I'll give you an example because I have experience in almost all segments. Like when I joined the organization a couple of years back, we were around 700 people. My why was, or I decided myself, give myself a target, was to take this company from 700 to 7,000. So in 2 years, from 700, we have come up to 2,000. Let's see how much time I'll take to make it a 7,000 people company. That was a clear why for me. And when it comes to vision, mission, and culture through values, these days, it's not that you can be a CEO sitting in the cabin. You have to be on the ground, just like Mr. Mehta said. Of course, you have decided the strategy. You have your team with you. In fact, there's a very important thing of deciding the strategy, that you have to have everybody's buy-in. So in the strategy planning, if everybody has a buy-in, or in fact, they come up with the strategy which you have in your mind, you get it out of their mouth, you automatically let their buy-in. Execution becomes easier, but you can't sit in your cabin and think that the execution is happening in the perfect manner. You have to be on the ground, take floor walks, just like Mr. Mehta said. He's touching every employee, have an Excel sheet. You have to do that. You have to visit all the sites periodically, take feedback from the ground level people. So I'll give you a very quick example that my ground level people were called agents. They were touching the customer experience. I changed their designation to customer experience officer. So I'm not the only CEO. I've got 2,000 CEOs in the company. So doing all of that to motivate them, to get their feedback, work on that immediately. That's all is required now. We cannot do anything in a silo. We have to do all. it's not an easy task now, and I agree with you, Mr. Mehta. It's becoming complex day by day, but that's what keeps us going. That's what we leaders are for. That's what allows me to get out of bed, get dressed, and rush to the office. I, by the way, still go to the office. I was only in a lockdown for a month in April. May onwards, I started going to the office, and I'm there every day. But all of my employees are working from home. This passion, if you have in you, actually, the key ingredient here is passion as a leader, and you know your why. You know how to go there. You have a great team with you. You are definitely going to succeed.
Wow, thank you so much, Aditya, on this, on the perspectives that you shared, and I really believe that as a leader who's doing both strategy and also helping a team execute things, you've got to touch base with your team very often, and without that, I mean, I don't think anything's going to move really. That is clearly very powerful, and thank you so much for sharing that perspective. Okay, now we are almost coming towards the closing section of our meeting today, which is probably the last round, wherein, oh, so Kanchan has something to say. Yes, Kanchan. Kanchan, you're on mute.
Yes, so before Aditya, we start wrapping up, I have a small, thing to ask of my panelists, and of whatever I have heard from Sangeeta, whether it is about being a magnet. I love the analogy of the leader being a magnet and, aligning his iron filings together, or about Anil speaking about and giving a very succinct example of how to reach out to the guys in the trenches, and the example of the army. I wanted to put this out to everybody here, that when we talk of the army or the services or the forces, that is where strategy and execution comes most into play, and very visibly. Whenever we speak of this example, whenever we speak of strategy and execution, we cannot ignore the forces, the defense forces, and the various examples that come forward. But also what we heard, and what Anil said was that earlier, yes, the generals or the chiefs would be sitting behind, and there would be a strategy and everybody would be following it. But having said that, there are also occasions and there are times when these guys are told that you will take a decision right there and then. So what, as per you, do you think is, would you call strategy then? Because if strategy is not just following orders from wherever they are being controlled, and if at that spot of the moment you have to take that call right there, how would you say that? How would you put this whole thing together? Would you say this is a part of the strategy, or would you say this is more hands-on execution of what you have in front of you at that moment? You're muted, Sangeeta.
Yeah, if I could respond to that, please. For me, there's a very clear distinction between strategy and execution, even on the field when you're trying to tackle an enemy. Your strategy so let's take an example. Your strategy then would be whether you want to surround the enemy, you want to make a frontal attack. You have the ability to do the surround because you have to have units at the back, or you have to know the terrain. Or are you going to just, put on your guns and just keep on turning 360 degree and keep firing and hope you hit the enemy? So to me, the strategy is the part that will determine what is that big thinking step you want to take, in which direction do you want to move? And the execution of it will be to bring it alive. That's how I usually describe it. I want to make one or two quick points to what we've just heard. It's been an excellent discussion. I want to mention, structures today have become flat. There are no more hierarchies within organizations, and so leaders are tremendously under pressure. As Anil mentioned, I think you got the frontline guy, the Jawan, basically in touch with this commanding officer, and you got the sales rep in touch with the CEO because he's got access to digital medium. But I think in all of this churn and burn and this getting sucked into doing a lot of keeping in touch with everybody in the trenches, it's even more important to make something called me time, to make time for reflection, to make time for, as I think Anil Mehra said, sit on top of the tree. I think I really like that. It's, I mean, okay, you can fly with the birds, but sitting on top of the tree, time to reflect, to get away from it all and say, okay, what is my role as that North Star that leads this team through all the chaos to get to a place where we want to eventually get in terms of a business. And I think what can guide it is culture, values, your vision can be slightly longer term. But I think to me, that's a very clear role. And I also want to just add, and I'll stop after that, is that I don't think strategy is the preserve of the few. But I think there has to be one leader and there has to be one agreement. Or this is going to be our strategy for either this year, for these 6 months, or to tackle this particular business, or whatever, to do this M&A, whatever is at hand. There has to be a leader who sort of takes that final decision and then builds that alignment within the organization to bring through the execution. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Dr. Avantika has something to say. Yes, Dr. Avantika.
Yeah, so Kanchan, great question. Actually, I was just reflecting while Sangeeta was talking as well on what happens when you have to take actions and decisions on the ground that may or may not be a part of the strategy itself, right? So when that cascading down has happened from the thinking to the doing, but it's not exactly how you had planned it because life never is. How do you make those decisions then? So it's a great question. It is something that happens in organizations at the grassroots level or in the trenches, like Anil said, all the time. I think the strategic part of that, though, Kanchan, still is that it is very much the job of the thinkers to create those guardrails, right? To say, in the event this happens, so we think a lot in terms of scenario planning and scenario modeling and this, that, and the other, best case scenarios, worst case scenarios, what if this goes wrong, right? So a lot of the times, the question that you're asking that how will somebody make that decision on the ground, you can't reach out to the CEO, you have to make a sale at the moment, and you don't have access to the CEO all the time. Those guardrails, setting that sort of, whatever radius for people to take those decisions, giving them the delegation, the authority to go ahead, that's very much a part of the strategy. So I think that is something that, good strategic thinking will always take into account.
Super. I mean, what Avantika said is exactly what I was going to say, that, we've established sort of our pole star, that everything has to qualify on the 3-word value system we have, which is Imandari, Adar, and Kada Parishram. So long as it is honest, so long as it's respectful, and so long as it's you've done the work, go ahead, make the decision. But yes, there are grids within which you can do it. So, you can't have a guy sitting 2,000 kilometers away from you, coming back and, consulting with HO on what decision to take to retain or let go of a customer. So within that, because, human beings chafe under bonds. So you've got to get them the impression that, you have the freedom to act, to chase your destiny, but within these bounds. And, the outcome we want to expect, which is very clearly defined, because a lot of times, great strategies are made, but the communication is not titrated in the sense, how I tell my general managers about strategy is not the same way that I tell my frontline salesman about how the strategy translates into his life. So I think we work probably a lot of great strategies probably also fail because of poor communication, that we haven't tailored the communication to how do you connect it to my life? How do you connect your strategy to my life? Because they will, and then how do you move from saying your strategy to our strategy? So I think, a great thing you could do is probably bring such power thinkers like Avantika and Sangeeta and Aditya here to talk about how the transmission and preservation of culture has changed in this new world, with the two big things being distractions and communication. How do you preserve culture? Earlier, it was easy to do because people would be the lifers at companies or would work 10 years in the same company. Life has changed. I mean, our frontline survives about 18 months. People at mid management survive at best about 2 years to 2.5 years. Even senior guys, you can't look beyond 5 years, if that, because in spite of ESOPs and everything and freedom, 5 years is 5 years of retention. So that is the challenge one faces. But yeah, like Aditya said, that's what keeps you going. You know, I'm still very excited about our very unromantic business. I haven't done a Maggie and I haven't done a Starbucks, but you know, I'm very excited about the business. And even if I'm out buying cigarettes, you know, I try to sell a loan to the panwala also. So I am like very immersed, intense, excited. But yes, once in a while, one does think, you know, what is this all about? So it's important to be the monkey and sit on the tree, you know, and be and I think it's while Sangeeta was speaking, one thing I realized is that, you know, especially for lonely CEOs like me, because we are running small businesses, we don't have a group to talk to in that sense. We just have our boards, and you meet the board once in a quarter. How do you find somebody you trust and somebody who you respect to come and be the foil to you? Because CEOs, especially in smaller companies, you know, 1,000, 1,500 people, get into the impression they are right all the time, because everybody around us is telling us all the time, you're great, sir, you are the best, and you know, you are super smart, you are the greatest things in sliced bread. Now, there has to be somebody who is the foil. And I think there's professional space there. Though executive coaches are there, but you know, I think you need something better. That you need to have someone who's the foil to you in the sense of a counsel, somebody who says no, and somebody who says you are an idiot if you're doing what you're doing. So that is a vacant space. So hopefully some new breed of professionals will emerge after I retire when that happens. Good stuff, guys. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely. So Anil, here I must say that, you know, I read somewhere that your strategy must be contagious, but with the kind of energy that you give out, I think that is your strategy, because the kind of energy you give out, that is contagious.
You have to be, look, if you're, I think, you know, the day I'm not excited about this business, the day I don't want to get up, shave, get ready and go to work, I'll walk. That day I'll walk. That hour I'll walk. I'm very sure of that. So I think all of us are like that. I'm sure, you know, looking at the track records of all of us here, I mean, I probably am at the bottom of the scale, but, you know, we have to be excited about our businesses, you know. And there are, you see small guys, you know, my gardener is like so intense about what he does, that you admire these people and wishes one could be more like them. So there is space for doing that in every profession at every level, I think.
Yes, Sangeeta.
Can I compliment you, Anil?
Oh, please.
I was thinking of
calling you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was thinking of calling you to invite us to our board soon.
No, I want to compliment you on one of the best leadership traits, which a lot of leaders actually don't have, is humility.
I have a lot to be humble about, so I'm playing with good cards.
I can just quickly mention that Ratan Tata always used to carry his own briefcase. I spent many years with the Tatas in a very senior role, so I used to be debriefing him every quarter on our business. And he never allowed anybody to carry his bag. And we used to meet at Taj Hotel, all of us, about 10, 12 of us, for a meeting. If there was one consumer in that restaurant, okay, in a place we wanted to sit, he would tell the restaurant head, please find us another place. Please don't disturb this person. I mean, you know, it's not a common trait, but it's a very good thing to have. So compliments to you.
And also the fact, the story about buying smokes from a panwala and selling that guy alone. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just like, that's beautiful, right? I mean, as the leader, as the CEO of a company, I mean, you are at ground interacting with people and understanding the key insights that a consumer will have, right? And that is probably one of the key things that drives strategy. So I have a question, right? There is,
Okay.
yeah, Sankalp.
No, go ahead. Yeah, ask.
Right.
I'll speak after you.
So I mean, there is a saying, right? Why change something that's working, right? Now imagine like a week before COVID came in. I mean, that I don't think that would be a good strategy to go by. So I mean, what is the panel's view on uh, why change strategy? Is it always like the North Star that we are always going toward? Can it be a little fluid and different in terms of how we do? How
It
we are
can't be a
fixing?
trophy.
Hmm.
This romance of trophy outcomes is a killer. And again, coming back to ourselves, we are in the lending business.
Yeah.
We were chasing the trophy outcome of being great on credit. None of our loans goes bad. We are very selective about our customers, and we lost about 2.5 years of growth because we were chasing this trophy outcome. So I think, even saying my strategy cannot change in spite of, one asteroid coming and about to hit the earth, uh, I think is again this trophy mentality which says we've thought it through, it's all perfect, it can't change. I think we need to be sort of cognizant that there are things beyond us, and we need to be alert, and we need to change. We damn well change. So, recently, about 6 months ago, post COVID, I decided we needed to have a COO, somebody who could challenge me in the company. And we went, and in COVID, when nobody was hiring, we gave out this huge mandate to someone, and we recruited a COO. When the business was uncertain, we didn't know, only because we thought we will have to change. If we continue doing this graduated, conservative, nice path, slow path to growth, it ain't working. So, uh, and giving up this trophy mentality, because everyone, my board told me, and everyone else told me, you are good running the company, you don't need another guy. But ultimately I had to fight the ball and get to a place where we needed to hire a guy. We got the guy, and I am so pleased, that I took on that fight. I'm normally a non-confrontational guy, but here I took up the fight, made it happen, and we've got a guy who's really, really transforming us.
Wow.
He's doing a great, super job. And a lot of these holy cows within the company have gotten challenged, established by me, but they've gotten challenged. Some of them have got destroyed, and it's put us on a different path. So changing strategy, I don't think is a good option to have, saying I will not change strategy.
Right.
I
Dr.
would jump the
Avantika. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
no, I agree with what Anil was saying there. And
Yeah.
just adding to the list of compliments for you, Anil, also, I think the vulnerability that you show and which we have seen in the last whatever hour, I think that's also commendable. It's not a trait that you see in CEOs and CXOs. But sorry, Adi, coming back to your question, I think the biggest damage a business leader can do to their business is complacency,
Yeah.
right? Is thinking that because we are somewhere, we will remain there, right? Especially today when there is just so much dynamism in the market, the world's becoming such a small place with digital transformation and things like that. Everybody knows everything. Everybody knows when you do something right. More importantly, everybody knows when you don't do something right either, right? So it's so quick nowadays to fall from that number one spot and go right down to the bottom because you were either complacent or you were not listening, which is often a very long forgotten trait. You were not listening to your employees, you were not listening to your customers. So I think the reason you should not fix something that's not broken, but the reason you should continue to improve something that's working is because the minute you get complacent, that's when you fall. So that's sort of my sense on it, and I've seen a lot of this in my career, where I've spent a few years in Australia, and the Australian market is a fairly consolidated one. So there are 4 big banks, 2 retailers, 3 telcos. Everything you can literally count on your fingertips and say, there are 4. And it might sound I'm just probably not a very big fan of Australia, but what happens when you have this kind of complacency is you forget that outside of the 4 big banks, there will be a time that there will be a no brick and mortar bank. There is no bank branch. There are no ATMs. It is all digital. And the next thing you know, right under your nose, there are people doing banking services without actually ever having a branch, right? So I think the reason you should continuously reinvent and focus to improve what you've already got is to make sure you don't fall in that complacent bracket.
I think beautifully articulated, Dr. Avantika. Everybody knew that the world is getting digital and all of that is happening, but everything catalyzed because of COVID. Yeah. And there are a lot of businesses that have actually made a mark and they've gone up there because of the entire catalyzation that has happened because of the COVID.
And
times.
Sorry, just one last thing. There are businesses who are finding new types of competitors they didn't even know about. While you're so busy competing with the top 2 or 3 that you think are your competitor set, there are other smaller players coming all the time and you're just like, wait, hang on, who the hell are you? How did you get 10% market share? Where did you even come from, right? And it's happened to so many businesses now. So I think if we're too focused on the pie, right, and our share of the pie, we forget that the pie increases, right? And with digital, the pie in a lot of sectors has increased manyfold. So yeah, sorry, I wouldn't harp too much on that point, but I feel that that's something that brings the downfall of a lot of businesses, that complacency.
Absolutely. If I could just
yes, Sangeeta.
Just add two quick points to what Dr. Avantika just said. And I think it's very important not to take strategy as something being fixed in the ground. Even if it's not broken, you need to keep on reviewing it. And I want to mention 2 things that can help you to review it. One is to have a 360-degree vision. I mean, you know how the whole payment gateway story has gone, right? I mean, Google has the largest payment gateway. United Payments Incorporated and a whole lot of other people have been building this. Paytm, for example, is some number 4, in the payment gateway. So competition can come out of anywhere from the woodwork anytime, and you have to be constantly alive to that. The other thing is, sometimes you're building great value in your business. Take all the large digital companies, take Google, take Amazon, take Facebook. They've got data on consumers and they use that asset to leverage it to build into new businesses. I mean, who would have ever thought that Facebook and Zuckerberg are now going to do micro pensions and micro health insurances using Facebook? So I think it's, so strategy is not something fixed. So it's not as if it's broken and you need to fix it, but you need to constantly review it in a very changing world scenario, economic scenario. And in addition to that 360-degree vision, you need a very strong connection to the consumer. I call it consumer centricity. You've got to be centric to who are you servicing today, right? And if you're not able to understand how their preferences are shifting, because they are shifting, if you can understand that, you're complacent and you're not able to keep pace with your own business. So I think those 2 guide points to actually keep on refreshing your strategy. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Another question that is pretty linked to what I asked is, right, I mean, strategy is a big word, right? It's almost, as Sangeeta already mentioned, it's kind of abused to a level where everybody is a strategic thinker, right? To a level where there is a glamour associated with the word strategy, right? Now, but nobody talks of execution, like I'm the execution guy and takes pride in it. I mean, why does that happen? Ramcharan says that, execution is the act of the discipline of getting things done. And Ramcharan also mentions that, it's boring. It's plain boring every day, day in and day out, doing some set of things done just so that everything moves forward. So your views on the power of execution, and why do you feel it's not as glamorous today to be the execution guy compared to the, say, strategic person?
It's very glamorous. The guys at a premium are guys who can execute well. It's a very boring, repetitive job, but doing it the same way again and again and again while keeping an eye out, because the executors also need to be alert. See, execution doesn't happen by just being a ghoda and, putting blinkers on and doing it. That's not how it works. I mean, the best guys I have seen, execution guys, have a very clear eye on the strategy too. And these are guys who are alert, who change course, but make things happen. They deliver to strategy. How they deliver, they would not walk the well-trodden, compacted path. They are guys who would find ways to make things happen, and they do make it. I mean, I think you may want to consider that you are probably not quite right. I mean, great execution guys are at a super premium. I mean, if I found a great execution guys, I would pick him up immediately. Strategy, I can buy a McKinsey, right? To help me. I could buy EY to help me. I could buy anyone. But execution is not easy. Execution guys, very difficult to find, very difficult to evaluate. Guys who have track records, it's very difficult to identify if this guy was the executor. When you are doing a hiring piece, failure rates are 50% on guys who do this.
Right. Before I bring you Dr. Avantika and Sangeeta, I would really want to bring in Aditya Kashyap on this, because I mean, Aditya is a person he's a complete believer in execution. So yeah, your point of view on that, Aditya.
It's not doing the same thing again and again. It's no longer boring. From aviation execution to healthcare execution to putting up solar power panels on the terrace at 46 degrees centigrade, and then to sit in the CEO cabin and decide on strategy. Execution is no longer boring. And in fact, even if, let's say a call center executive is answering calls, not all the calls are same. Not all the customers are same. Not all the customers' expectations are same. So execution is definitely not doing the same job again and again today. In fact, this environment and Mr. Mehta's last 4 years experiences, every time there was a new challenge and your executioners were actually coming up with the answers to those challenges. Execution is no longer same. It needs a lot of courage to be there, keep fighting.
Right. So execution is no longer boring is what Aditya's contention is. Dr. Avantika, your point of view.
Yeah, and look, I never thought it was boring, to just put it out there. I don't think it was ever boring. It was, where I agree with you, Adi, I don't think it was as glamorous. I don't think it was as sexy to be the executioner on the ground. There, I 100% agree with you. But I also think that's changing, because, and in a large proportion, I think we've got to give it to the entrepreneurs, we've got to give it to the MSME sector, we've got to give it to the small business owners for making it sexy. If you even, think about the kind of jobs that MBA grads do, right? In my time, I graduated in 2013. Back then, nobody would even think of taking a startup job, right, out of the IIMs. So you would either just go for an investment bank if you really cared about money, or you would go straight to a top tier consulting firm. I mean, I'm talking about if you have the choice, you would go straight to a top tier consulting firm. You would just not consider anything smaller than that, right? That's completely changed now. If you think about it, I mean, from IIM Calcutta, I went to BCG first and then did a few other jobs before now being at EY. Now that I think about it, it's very hard to get top talent into consulting, because in fact, it's the other way around. We are no longer glamorous or sexy, right? Because it's become, wait, hang on, if I have a Swiggy job, would I still join a McKinsey? Let me consider, right? Yeah. Because I will actually get real-time experience, as opposed to, like we are often blamed, create a PowerPoint slide, right? So I think I agree with you. Almost like a decade ago, it wasn't glamorous. I think it's no longer the case.
Right. Sangeeta, yeah, please. Sangeeta, you're on mute. You need to unmute. Yeah.
I don't fully agree with the fact that execution is really becoming sexy. And I'll tell you why. Because I think all business has an underbelly. Every life has a darker side. Every piece of work has a drudgery in it. So if I wanted to make, I don't know, chicken curry, or if I wanted to make some vegetable, I'll have to first buy it, wash it, chop it. And that's not an interesting part. But I think there are some necessary parts to life. I mean, if I asked you today, Adi, what's new? It's a normal day, maybe for you,
Yeah.
if you do this every day. It's a normal day, right, for many of us,
Yeah.
unless we get on a call like this, right? So, but I think that that's a given. I mean, work has a part of it which is repetitive and you may not find it interesting. But here's a point of view which I want to introduce. And I think what can change that is the passion for what you do. And I think Anil mentioned that. I mean, if you are interested and passionate about what you do, if that is your vision of your work, you know, you will say, "Acha, ye to karna hi hai. I have to chop the vegetable, no, before I can put in the spices and stir it and then add a few this and that to make it more interesting, right?" And that's what you can do in a job. So I think one of the things I want to draw from what Avantika said, which is very, very important, those guardrails, which people sometimes see as limiting, I see them as liberating. So if somebody asked me, you know, is this a box which has got boundaries? I'd say, I'll redefine the box. I'll take away those boundaries. I know they're there. So how it works is, if you have a guardrail, I know what is the bare minimum I have to stay within. Outside of that, everything I can do. It sort of unleashes an innovative outlook to work. And the moment you can do that, and so I am a believer in systems and processes, and I believe that systems and processes are liberating because they liberate my time and energy to do things differently, to do things innovatively, while the drudgery gets taken care of by the system and process. And that's what I think you can bring to everybody's work. You know, the
Great.
smallest piece of work on this planet can be very interesting depending on what is your outlook and what is your passion.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sangeeta. I mean, I'm now opening the entire panel for question and answers from the audience. And I see Sankalp raring to go. Sankalp, your turn.
Yeah, I think also just to add to what the panelists were saying, right? I think execution is also about trying to figure out how do you do the same thing better and smarter every day, rather than just repeating the task blindfoldedly. But I think the one very interesting point which came up in the discussion, if you remember 2 weeks back at Reciprocity, we had a conversation of culture.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to see how the panelists have tied up strategy and execution with culture. So Yashaswini's conversation about doing cultural analysis and cultural fit just ties the whole story together very well today. My one question to the panelist is about, you know, today when you look at corporates or any organization, everybody's looking at diversification, right? If you look at fintech companies, they want to sell gold, they want to sell mutual funds, they want to sell everything on planet Earth. Tatas have realized they missed the bus of being online. And with Geo, they said, look, let's go buy Big Basket and everybody else. Geo, thinking they'll miss the bandwagon of app development, has gone and bought 40 startups in the app space, right? And a lot of it has panned out, a lot of it is not panned out for these companies, right? So how important is this diversification piece in today's world? And what should one be careful of while looking at diversity?
Yes, Dr. Avantika.
Yeah, so great question, Sankalp. I think the reason so much diversification is happening because the consumer preferences are changing, right? Now, as a user of things, we all want everything at the push of a button now, right? We all want things to be one-stop shop, right? We're all trying to, optimize for our time, optimize for our efforts, and therefore, the more consolidated the services can be to us, the easier it is for us to use them, right? So I think that's the core sort of reason why you see that much diversification outside of course business and economic outcomes that companies are looking for. So I think to the extent that diversification brings retains your existing customers and brings in new customers, it's absolutely something that businesses should be concerned about. Only because there's now way too much knowledge, way too much information, too many options that are available to us online, right? So it's only a matter of fact, there used to be this, and back in my BCG days, we used to consult a lot on stickiness of a customer, right? How sticky can you make a particular customer for your services? that stickiness now is no longer about value add that your particular one business is giving. The stickiness has spread across the different diversified businesses. So I think to the extent you're able to provide that value through diversified services to retain your own base and to attract a new base of customers, I think it absolutely makes sense.
I'd like to add a slightly different perspective to that. Eventually, everybody can be a one-stop shop. I can make, sell, reach, get the money, and go through that whole cycle again for everything that you need as a consumer. I mean, ultimately, when all is said and done, you can bundle it all and have just one large conglomerate. But I think we have to remember something. One is competition is healthy. Why? So it keeps people on their toes. It gives the customer the best deal he can get. So competition is important. So we shouldn't allow this one behemoth. You can see what's happening. There's antitrust laws against Facebook and Google, and everybody's trying to find them in different countries in different manners. So people are very conscious of the fact that you cannot be a one-stop shop. I think it's very important in exactly this scenario that you described, Sankalp, very well described, for you to try to step away and think, what is it that I want to be as a company? Do I need growth? Do I need profit? Do I need both right now? So some companies will say, okay, I need a payment gateway because you know what? I've got this base of customers. I don't have to do anything. It doesn't cost me a dime to have a payment gateway. So I'll just operate it and I mean, Google's become got the largest payment gateway. There's some 900 million transactions or something like that in India. So, but I think it's important to, in this scenario, while we speak of a roster of decisions, a roster of actions, a roster of decisions that strategy can typically become, it's important to know what is it that you want to do as a company. The why is important. Right. And yes, you may use diversification, and a lot of them have diversified it. I mean, the Swiggies and Zomatos, I think they were opening cloud kitchens and all that, and finally they stopped. Thankfully, they stopped that. No, I think it was Ola, not Ola, Uber Eats. And I thought to myself, my goodness, I mean, they're running cabs and they want to now start cooking food. So fortunately, it's only delivery of food. But I think there's got to be sensible diversification, and it's got to fit in somewhere with your slightly longer term thinking. Yes, you can be opportunistic and you can shut down businesses. So run it. I think there's some consultant who said, run your strategy like a call option, not like the bond market. So don't fix the coupon rate. See whether there's money in the call market. If it's in money, run it. The moment it goes out of money, shut it. And I think Google's done that. They've shut Revolve, right. They've sold their mobility business. So they've done that, and businesses are doing that. But I agree with you, Sankalp, that sometimes it boggles my mind also, you know, just to see them wanting to do everything.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, the question which comes to my mind is, everybody talks of core competency, right?
Yeah.
So now you're talking about not one or two core competencies, now you're talking about 50 core competencies which have developed. And I think it becomes a lot more challenging for organizations to deal with that stretch. Anyway, you're all running thin on, you're already running thin on ice, right, with our current business. So anyway, I think Aditya's.
Yeah, so we are running thin on time as well. So I have a question coming from Romy Juneja. Romy, your turn. Please ask a question to the panelists and also mention which panelist you are asking the question to.
My question is simple. While strategy needs to be reviewed very regularly and with the changing times, one needs to be looking at it and therefore evolving it. Question is, should it be transformational or incremental? Having listened to both Dr. Avantika and Sangeeta very precisely on this, looking at the core competency on the other side, looking at the bigger picture which is emerging out, what and how should this be tackled?
So
either of the two could answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that I would like it to be transformational. That's the way I would like always to have strategy in that sort of box, which says that it should be transformational. But in today's world, you know, what does that word even mean, transformational? Because everything is transforming, you know. So, you know, that itself needs a definition, I feel. That's the difficulty.
Yeah, and Romy, I can take that one as well. So Again, just like strategy, even I agree with Sangeeta, even transformation is it is a maligned word at the moment because everything is transformative. Um, when we look at, and I don't know what business you're in, Romy, but when we look at any business, right, and when we are called in as consultants to say, can you rewrite our strategy or can you help us revise our strategy? I think not everything needs to be transformational, right? Is one of the first lessons that we try and, or one of the first insights perhaps that we try and give to a CXO or a CEO, that it's okay to aim big, aspire big. It's okay to continuously have that big vision in mind, but always remember, and I'm going back to one of the things that Aditya said, you need people around you to be able to deliver stuff as well. So there is no point writing this absolutely transformative plan if there is no one around you to actually deliver it. You'd rather take those baby steps. You'd rather have incremental approach to progress as opposed to a disruptive transformation. Right. So it's very glamorous to say we are revamping everything. There are lots of these big words that get thrown around. Let's revamp. Let's look at holistic change. Again, I'm sounding like a absolute consultant now. But people love that kind of language. People love that kind of absolute management jargon to say we will reinvent, we will redefine. All those are great, but they are only going to last if you have the people around you to be able to deliver that change. And oftentimes transformation fails because it was on paper, right? Because you couldn't put it in practice.
Can I add just one thought to what you just said? That's brilliant. So sometimes what I've done is I've looked at it as in a slightly longer perspective and said, if you want it to be transformational, build towards it. So build it as part of your strategy going forward. But please do remember you have existing resources, people, talent, knowledge, capital, etc., which you can leverage to build today's profit, tomorrow's growth. But day after's growth, maybe you can build towards being transformational. You need to get new talent. You need to understand that segment of business, etc., etc. So I've actually done that in the past, moved towards being transformational and being disruptive.
Brilliant. In paucity of time, we are just going to have closing remarks from all our panelists. And what did you like? What did you learn today? Which perspectives really you feel were very valuable that was shared today? Starting with Dr. Avantika.
Oh, thank you. Look, I think it was a great discussion. I loved how by and large we were sharing similar thoughts, but from very different perspectives. So obviously, the way I view the world from a business corporate side is very different from the way Aditya and Anil see it, right? So I think what I loved was, while I will come from that management strategy angle, they will come and talk about how they've actually been able to put it to practice. So I think that was fantastic, I think. And then just the second thing I want to call out is, I don't think we should get too muddled with the words, right? So oftentimes I think what holds us back is this transformative? Is this strategy? Is this business strategy or corporate strategy? Is it, is it a functional thing? Is it a team thing? Is it a CEO thing? So I think, just as a last thought, I feel I'm a great supporter of getting out there and doing stuff. So instead of, like Anil was saying, analysis paralysis, overthinking what some of these terms actually mean. But thank you so much for the opportunity. I think it was wonderful. Thanks, Aditya.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Avantika. Sangeeta.
Yeah, I think I've spoken a lot already. So
your closing remarks in terms of what you like.
Yeah, just two things. I think, as Avantika said, let's get away from all the terminology. I think what was very interesting for me is when you look at the word strategy, you look at people who've applied it in their business today. Yes, it is a roster of options, and it does need refreshment and renewal much more frequently than before. And I think the other bit about being the CEO who doesn't sit in those hallowed portals of a CEO, that corner office has really become like the center and open desk in the office. where that corner office concept is gone. And I think that's very true. And it came through very clearly in our discussion today. So I think those were the two key pickups for me from the discussion, but really enjoyed it. And very, very nicely done. I must compliment all of you for that, and thank the other panelists.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Aditya, what's your perspective and your closing remarks?
I'll repeat what Avantika and I said. Great discussion, and of course, at the end of the day, it's all about doing this thing in the best possible manner, keeping your team with you, and helping them. That's some of the key learnings that I will take from this session. Thank you for inviting me. Had a great session. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Kanchan. Thank you, team.
Pleasure having you here, Aditya. Thank you so much for being here. Last but not the least, Anil sir, you have the last word on your closing remarks. So you need to unmute yourself. You're muted. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Kanchan, Aditya, for organizing this. I got some free consultancy and a little agenda I need to work on. So I hope Avantika and Sangeeta don't send me a bill. But yeah, this was interesting, made one think, good to take time out. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And of course, Aditya's practical outlook, I loved. Maybe I'll walk across to his office one of these days.
Please, sir, please.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. Kanchan, back to you.
Yes, so absolutely. It was an amazing discussion. I have personally learned and taken back a lot that I could actually, implement and think about. And thank you everyone for participating in this discussion and being such a participative and attentive audience. And most importantly, the panelists. I mean, love the free flow of perspectives and insights that you have given to all of us. And huge gratitude from all of us for sparing this time for us. For those who are watching us, should you be keen to know more about reciprocity, we'd be glad to extend an invite to one of our meetings. And please drop your emails on the chat box and we will send you an invite. And the recording of this session will also be available on our YouTube channel, Reciprocity, for your reference. Please do subscribe and do take a look. Thank you everyone for this amazing and this great session that we had today. Thank you.